Hey, welcome to Behavior Business Roundtable, episode 2. I'm Kyle, moderating once again for this great panel of folks. You guys want to say hi? Who wants to go first?
Hi.
You
That's all
got
you're
you got to do
getting.
more than
That's
that.
perfect,
You got to do
Steve.
more than that.
I am.
Morning, everyone. It's morning for me.
Yeah. It's not
Yeah.
here. It's 2 p.m. here. So
I've never been to Arizona, Krista. I picture just like a vast desert and like tumbleweeds rolling around. Is that what it is, or am I
There
just?
is. I mean, we do have, there's like little like scrubby brush. Like there is some green, but it's,
Are you
yeah.
I
I
are you
mean,
in
on
the
feel.
the
valley?
on the highway, there is legit like tumbleweed that like, watch out because it's going to just like explode on your car.
I have
Oh
a feeling
man.
that like between meetings, she's out there with like the 3-pronged stick, looking for water for something to drink between, like just to sustain.
We do have
Yes.
roadrunners and coyotes. So I'm also
Nice.
like
I was
looking
I
for
was
like the
actually
Acme
in
boxes.
yeah, I was actually in Arizona this past December and up by Flagstaff up in the mountains, so it was fun.
Yeah. Flagstaff is really nice. We were there for spring break.
Man, amazing. Well, it's good to hear about the terrain that you live in, Kristen. How's everybody else doing?
Good. Good. Nice sunny day here in Michigan.
Yeah.
Good, good.
Been too busy. Been sick. The normal. What
Oh, you're
what you
fine.
go through everyday life.
I keep bothering you. I keep calling you.
Yeah, I ignore him every time.
Is that a hot pink water bottle, Taylor?
It is. My daughter got it for me.
All right. Love it.
It's a good one. Well, hey, we're here. Our topic today is BCBA, education quality, and kind of how that translates into the job description in the job world. I don't have a good working title yet. I imagine by the time this is released post, I'll have a nice little title underneath. But that's the topic we're talking about today. So same rules as the first one. I'm going to present a prompt. We'll give each person a minute to kind of give their educated take on that prompt, and then a little time for discussion afterwards. So, any questions from y'all?
No.
We're
I think
good.
we're ready. I think I'll just pick somebody to go first here. So, Steve, you're directly to my right, so I'll present you with this first one. In terms of training, what are some of the biggest surprises that you see new BCBAs encountering in their first role that their graduate training didn't prepare them for?
I think it depends a lot on where they went to school, what program they were in. I know coming from a university program where it was a lot of involvement, all of your training, your hours were done in through that program. The biggest leap I've seen from those folks, including myself, was the amount of time you actually have to spend with each individual consumer and working with them, and the work you can get done. What we were able to do in school just was not sustainable in order to make a company or a system work. But then, you're often being asked to stretch things too far, and now you may not be able to provide the level of care that's necessary either. And so, figuring out that balance, figuring out how to handle ethical dilemmas that come up that you didn't get that direct scenario in your ethics class, or you did, but now you have the pressure of a boss or somebody else hanging over you, and how do you fight with that? um and I think generally just the idea that, okay, in this bubble I've done this, but outside the bubble it just doesn't feel quite the same.
Kristen, your take.
I mean, I agree with what Steve's had to say. I do think it comes down a lot to individual experiences, and if you were at a site where you had really fantastic mentorship and you choose to maybe leave the organization and work somewhere else, if that mentorship immediately kind of dissipates as soon as like, oh, you have your credentials, so now you're on your own, and that piece gets kind of yanked out from under you, I think that's a pretty difficult transition for a lot of folks. I've also seen some students who don't get all the experiences that they should have, and then all of a sudden they're asked to do things that they were never taught during their supervision, and that's challenging too, but will be site and experience specific.
Got it. Taylor, go for it.
I think I'm gonna reference this maybe to my own personal experiences as maybe some of the OG BCBAs that we are all on this page. I think we all got our credentials in the late 2000s, early 2010s. And say when I graduated, I had no clue about insurance requirements, funding requirements. And I think right now, probably one of the more glaring problems that I'm seeing, because I think now that a lot of the programs are online, you're doing it kind of you're working for a business rather than, like Steve had said, where you're just kind of working through that picturesque ideal, working through the university. They may be getting more experience to writing treatment plans, but what's missing is that idea of how to write it through the lens of medical necessity and being able to justify your treatments based on medical need, because that's the lens that our service is coming from. And so that's, I think, what I see the biggest kind of barrier to new BCBAs right now, that their graduate programs didn't prepare them.
So are folks getting, what I'm hearing is we see folks getting maybe heavier on like the clinical scenarios. Kristen, you talked about like mentorship. Maybe mentorship is dropping off like once those letters are there. Steve, you're talking about graduate program specific thing. Are those like the most, kind of combine this second question here, those the most glaring gaps is like the real world day-to-day job description of a BCBA is so nuanced and tailored based on your what state you live in, what payer you're working with, things like that. Is that the biggest thing? Like, is mentorship after you have your letters the biggest thing missing?
I would say if you go through a program like university program and have the mentorship coming out of it, then it wouldn't be a big deal to transition. It's just going to be a bit of a shock. If you are coming from an online program that doesn't have as much of that over-encompassing feel to it, but you get your hours in the same center you're moving into, then you may still need some mentorship on, the science of things and how to design the programming. A mentorship there would cover it. And so I think mentorship goes a long way with a lot of these things. But when you're talking about actually glaring gaps, I think I'd add to that from the university side about, there's a lot of plug and play when someone comes out of a university program. Like I've encountered BCBAs who are working in aberrant behavior like we do, who say, okay, what assessment do you do for problem behavior? I'm like, well, I do a full FBA. And they're like, no, but like which tool? What do you fill out? And they've gone through this program of, or you do the VB map and that's it. Or you go do and fill out this assessment and that's it. It's not this global idea of you're using this to then analyze the behavior analytically. It's like this is supposed to spit out some info. And I think that is a gap there between the actual graduate training program that they're not being explained that this is not, okay, you just do this and then you're done. This is just part of your process to help you come up with this global picture of what's going on.
Gotcha. Any follow-up to Steve?
I think I had maybe one more tie-in to our last episode, actually, if you're just part of kind of like this organizational machine, and this also piggybacks on what Steve says of, I show up to work, I have to hit these metrics, I have to do these things, I have to work through these organizational processes. And that's just, and if you did your, like Steve was saying, if you did your supervision hours there, and that's all you were ever taught, all you were ever trained to do, I don't know if this is maybe a popular thing to say, but I'm seeing a lot of just copies of copies of copies of copies. And we're just getting watered down people that only know how to, like Steve was saying, like, I know how to fill out this report, I know how to run this assessment, but then how do I apply it to somebody that maybe doesn't fit that mold? And that's what I think is maybe one of the largest challenges that we're facing right now.
Yeah, if that is the situation in which you learn, and then you go to a new situation, you're probably absolutely screwed, versus having a global picture of how this should work and then getting that mentorship specific to the organization to figure out how you fit into their mold.
Yeah, I remember like my first year BCABA being put into a role like you're ready, like you got some letters now, you're ready, and feeling very confident in the science based on my graduate training was pretty robust. That even though it was online, I felt very like I had a practicum experience and the whole 9 yards in that regard. But then there was a feeling of, maybe it was imposter syndrome, but maybe it was also just kind of like, oh, but man, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to make everybody happy here, and I don't know if I'm even doing the right thing, like in moment to moment. Like there was a real. So like I felt comfortable clinically. I think it was in that first year, feeling like I really needed to know kind of the logistics. Like I didn't get a very heavy like like Taylor was saying, like this medical necessity side, or like how to even this silly things like billing, things like that. Like it was just kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't get a lot of support in that regard. So yeah, Kristen.
I think there's a lot to be said for those who get experience and mentorship in the area of just like time management. Like, how long
Mm,
should this task take you? Not this is what insurance is going to reimburse you for it, but like this is kind of the company expectation. Because as a graduate student, like, cool, I can just rack up some indirect hours. Doesn't matter if I took a little
for
bit
sure.
longer to do the assignment. But when you have your own caseload that you need to start managing, like how do you balance that to not only meet your, kind of requirements from your, billables and stuff like that, but just doing all the clinical things that need to get done. How do you fit all that into the day? And I think, again, like I am going to harp on the mentorship piece because it's not just, do you how to do your job as a BCBA, but there's those logistical policy, CPT code, like how do I actually bill for this? Can I bill for this? If you don't get a lot of that during your supervision time, like who's helping guide that, like once you are actually signing your name to that funder to say I rendered the service.
Yeah, I'll add, Kyle, it sounds to me like you just are missing the narcissism that you need to just assume that you're the best at everything right off the gate, like some people sitting in on my screen. I'm in the bottom right hand corner, but uh,
I
I'll also
focus too much
say,
on the humble behaviorism
yeah,
side. I need to.
but I'll also say I, at least when I'm hiring, appreciate someone coming in who has the background, has the knowledge, has the skills, because I want to be able to help you fit in and teach you how to work in what I'm expecting of you. And so I'd much rather have that than someone that's just able to go through those processes. I don't even know that learning how to bill, and this is probably an argument for later on in this discussion, but needs to be part of the training. I'd rather someone just learn how to be a good behavior analyst, and then your billing may be very different from one place to another. So it almost seems like a waste of time to spend too much, time on that sort of task.
That makes sense. This next question is kind of ties into and is actually very similar to kind of what we were just talking about. But Kristen, we'll start with you. Skills and behavior analysis are we watering down BCBA skills due to these kind of extraneous variables like pay requirements, workplace policies, things like that? Does that question make sense? I won't charge you for this time. Okay,
Yep.
now we'll time.
So I was talking to actually one of my old professors not too long ago, and she said, Kristen, when you went to graduate school, you went to school to become a behavior analyst. Now folks are going to school to become a BCBA, and those two things are not the same. I don't know, maybe I
uh,
should have put these on for that one because, like, maybe unpopular opinion. But while my practicum was in autism, like we still had a dual focus of OBM, and so we were doing systems work, and so and I wasn't just working. I had the opportunity to work with older populations with different diagnoses in our school center as well. And so it wasn't just you're going to grow up to be a BCBA who works with kids under 6 with autism. Like that was not my career path. That's not the reason I started my coursework at Western. I do work within the autism population. Don't get me wrong, but I don't feel like when I graduated from that program, like that was the only mold I was going to fit into. And I think that is where we are moving now, or have moved. I don't think it's brand new. I think we've been
sure.
moving in that direction for more than a hot minute.
Taylor, your take. Are you
You're
muted,
still
buddy? Sorry.
muted.
Yeah.
Still muted.
That's like it costs you like 10 seconds.
Oh man, I lost 10 seconds. Okay.
Reset.
My answer is a overwhelming yes, that the skills are being watered down by pay requirements, workplace policies, time, like 100%. And I will potentially use Michigan Medicaid as an example of that the requirements, they are illegal, the requirements that Michigan has in place. We have this issue with Michigan being able to enforce the mental health parity laws on Michigan Medicaid, but things like credentialing, things like I can't come up with options, like the training requirements, billing submission, the note submission requirements, all of these things that are taking up time on a BCBA's caseload, a behavior text caseload, that could be otherwise spent providing good services. It's atrocious. So I'll leave it at that as that one example, and hopefully no one comes back at me from Michigan Medicaid. But it's wild how much time is being taken away from, like what Kristen said, just being a good behavior analyst as opposed to a BCBA that checks the boxes.
You need some devil horns for that one.
Yeah, I know. I
Steve.
might order stuff from Amazon. I'll have to get the link from Kristen.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, I'd say it certainly is. I mean, it's not really even a question from, some of the great, well-trained people come out that then by the time you're in the field, you are just scrambling to get things done. And you're like, I really want to spend an extra 2 hours with this person and really hammer home this skill that you just can't get to it. And so we know there has to be a balance, because if you spend all your time on one client, then there's probably 10 other that are going to suffer because you can't give them the time that they need. But all these jumping through hoops, and it's increased so much in the last decade since I started our company that we now have to hire 2 or 3 extra administrative staff just so our BCBAs can actually get out and get their jobs done. And it is becoming ridiculous. It's almost like, okay, we're going to spend another $10 million proving that you're not being fraudulent when the fraud was maybe costing us $1 million. You know what I mean? It's obviously much bigger numbers than that, but we have to charge. Our prices have to go up every year because now we have to hire more people to do these basic systems just so the work can get done, or we drop down our quality of care. And that is, I think, what we're seeing a lot across the board with that.
Yeah, Taylor, go ahead.
I had a follow-up to what Steve was saying in the sense of just needing to hire those staff. So when I opened my organization, we worked exclusively with commercial insurance. We had a couple of people that were funded by Medicaid that were needing services. There was wait lists through the roof everywhere else. We had an open spot. So it was like, all right, we're going to credential with Medicaid in the state of Michigan. And we had about 10 clients that we were serving that we billed internally. We didn't hire out our billing. We had a staff member here that was doing our billing. It took us more time, more effort, more energy, and cost more to bill for our one Medicaid client than it did all 10 of our commercial insurance. It's through 4 different funding sources. And that was one. Like it's nuts. And so that's, I think, just to go back to that issue, is I think that there are a lot of payer requirements that then can also be inadvertently or purposefully applied company-wide that continues to bog down BCBAs, right? I mean, I'm on all the Facebook groups and the Reddits and the feeds and stuff. And every single day I see a post that says, I'm burnt out. Is being a BCBA the right choice for me? I'm wanting to move fields. And I don't have a solution, but I'm seeing it.
Yeah. I do think we didn't even really talk on the workplace policies as well. And it can be a lot of these organizations who are wanting to maximize those profits, like we talked about last episode, who are now setting up policies that can be barriers to actually helping people as well. And so we shouldn't just blame the system as a whole.
All right. Yeah.
But generally there should be a balance there between the amount of paperwork, the amount of work, and how much you're actually helping someone versus doing these ancillary tasks. And right now there is none of that balance from what I can see.
I would imagine this is not unique to behavior analysis either, like as far as human services fields go. I think maybe, and I don't know for sure, I think maybe what might be unique to behavior analysis is that our supervision requirements don't, and I can credit Liz Elias with this because she mentioned this I think last year when we talked to her, but like a nurse during their practical experience, a nurse will get exposure to lots of different populations. Like they'll work in different scenarios and settings. Ours are still kind of like depends on who's supervising you, and it kind of depend. Like you can seek out certain supervisory experiences, but it's not necessarily part of it to necessarily get exposure to all facets of the job. I don't know. Am I? Does that make sense?
I've been saying this probably a decade or longer. There was a Behavior Analysis Association in Michigan. I may have even still been a student at the time. I don't remember for sure. And there was a panel discussion. Like, all right, what do we do? And we see a lot of people coming out who are just learning to be autism practitioners and not necessarily behavior analysts, or that you fit that title of BCBA globally. And I think at that point, we even said the micro-credentialing, although we didn't have that word for it at that time. It's like, all right, you get a broad education in the science, and then if you want to specialize in something, you get that supervision, you get that mentorship, and then you can be a specialist in this area or this area. But it's like with doctors or anything else, like you have your basic medicine that you have to learn first, your anatomy, all these things, and then you have to go on and get that education into an area. It seems like we're bypassing that underlying education, just going straight into that specialty with a lot of people right now.
Mm. Kristen, I saw your hand.
Yeah, it's going to go a slightly different direction, so I'll zip it for now.
You can take it a different direction if you'd like, or we can move on to the next
Well, because I
question.
thought what you were going to talk about with related healthcare fields is like they also probably have a pretty significant, admin burden and things like that. But I think what's different for our field is it's so well, one, the amount of service is just so much more in terms of magnitude, right? Like if you're
Mhm.
a 6-year-old who got a hip replacement, you need follow-up PT after surgery. You're not going for 40 hours a week or 20 hours a week or even 15 hours a week for 6 months, right? Hopefully,
Right.
if you have a hip
Yeah.
replacement,
Yeah.
you're going in, getting some consult time with a technician, going home. And also, too, is a lot more standardized. If you're a female and you're in good shape and you had a hip replacement on one side, this is kind of your protocol to go through. And there's going to be some modifications. As you said, if you stand one way, it hurts a little bit weird. So maybe the PT is going to do some kind of impromptu progress, modification. But like for us, everything is so different. Like everyone's session note should look different, right? Because if I worked with Kyle and then I worked with Steve and then I worked with Taylor, like all of your goals are going to be different. How I'm instructing you is going to change. So there's no, I mean, I see people trying to do that, right? And that's that, we just read the treatment plan and it's like, Kyle had this deficit. So she's going to go and work on this skill, right? And because you can tell they've tried to copy and paste from someone else's treatment plan to try and save time.
Yeah.
And so why that is not a great idea and 0 stars do not recommend. I get why people are trying to do that because there is so much pressure to try to get all of this documentation done when I didn't go to school to become a receptionist, secretary type of role. I went there to be behavior analyst and help kids. And so I get the pressure, I get the competing contingencies. And I think in some other related fields, it's easier to do some of that copying and pasting
Yeah.
than it is for us.
Man,
I think they
just
should
this
just take,
morning. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Steve.
and I think they should just take a peg, stick it on there, give them a hat and an eye patch, and you're good. You don't even need that PT after the hip replacement. Just go full pirate.
Full pirate. I just saw this morning in one of the groups, tired of the same copy paste session notes, use our AI powered session note generator. And I'm like, oh, that's like the same thing though. Like, is it not just the same thing?
Yeah, but you're copy and pasting a lot of different session notes that way.
Right. Yeah. I was like, I feel like this isn't the flex that we are advertising it as. But okay, Taylor, for you, how well does graduate training prepare BCBAs to navigate conflicts between ethical clinical practice and productivity or pressures from outside funding sources, things like that?
I think it depends on the program. And then I think it also depends almost exclusively on who is doing your supervision, who is the BCBA that was guiding your clinical practice and your ethical practice. I think there's an overwhelming trend right now. So to tie this back to the original question of the productivity of funding pressures, and I create that as an ancillary to say productivity of the organization, where I see BCBAs go, it's not me doing the unethical thing. It's the business that's doing it. The owner's not a BCBA, or it's private equity. They're not BCBA, so they don't have to follow our rules. And I'm not the one breaking them, so I don't have to. And I think that deficit or that barrier right now is something that our graduate programs need to address. Because I think we are at a point in our field where we do have a overwhelming majority of BCBAs who are acting and behaving in that way. And I think that's a problem.
Steve.
Yeah, I would say I think even the best training in this area, because I feel like I had very good training. Half the class was just going through these really tough scenarios of what do you do? Here's the gray areas. How do you navigate those? And even still, I've known people who come through those programs who have it's a demand from their employer to make, break some of those ethical codes, to do something that's technically fraudulent. Like, oh, you're supposed to be doing your notes right now, but this kid's family hasn't showed up yet, so bill for that time anyways, sort of thing. And there's a reason, for like sexual relationships aren't allowed between supervisors and supervisees, because there's that power dynamic. And it's the same thing here where you know the right thing, you know what you should do, but you have this pressure on you. What if you get a bad rep? This place pays so well. What if I can't pay my bills? All these things that I don't think that you can truly really prepare someone to deal with those pressures in a classroom type setting, even though we may have even been given those exact same situations to prepare us for those. And I'll even say, even on more global ethics, I've had a lot of people I know that are always, ready to fight the establishment, fight the good fight, change these systems that we disagree with. That you get in there, you get in a role, and you're like, I'm just tired of fighting. I'm just going to do what I need to get my paycheck because I can't win this. And Taylor mentioned hoping he doesn't piss off Michigan Medicaid, and I know Michigan Department of Health and Human Services hates hearing from me all the time because although I have to fall in line with some of those policies just to get paid at all and to be successful, I fight everything just because it's what I do. And so expecting others to do that especially when they're not in the position of running the company is really too much. And how do you even prepare them for an ethical dilemma like that?
Yeah, I did want to reference. So, Steve, you had brought up that idea of getting burnt out. I don't know if you want to link it in the comments. I had read a LinkedIn post about someone had written about pebble tossers, and I think that's a good option to read if you're ever feeling burnt out. One of my favorite LinkedIn posts I've ever read.
Oh,
I want to hear
thanks,
about
Taylor.
that. Let's get, yeah. Kristen, elaborate.
Okay. Elaborate on the pebble tossers first, and then do you want me to answer the original question?
Do your answer first, and then I want
Okay.
to hear about pebble tossers.
So we're gonna bust these out a lot today.
Right
Yeah, we're gonna do a lot of devil horns today. To Taylor's point, right? I think there is sometimes a misinformation about the ownership of the decision making. And I don't think it's always nefarious. I don't think the BCBA always is like, oops, wash my hands of this. I think that sometimes, well, like they're like the boss. Shouldn't they know? Like they must know, right? Or they're listening to, the supervisor who's been certified for a year in their agency who's telling them like, well, this is just what we do here. And they're not questioning. So my recommendation to you is you have the contract with the funder, right? A lot of them, I mean, at least here in Arizona, Blue Cross Blue Shield, like they don't have a group policy contract. They have a contract with each individual BCBA that works at the agency, and they allow you to bill as a group. But that contract is actually between you and that funder. And so whenever you get credentialed, ask for the handbook. Ask for the funder handbook. If it's Medicaid, usually it's public. If it's commercial insurance, it's usually not. Ask for that handbook. Ask for the policy. So you're reading medical necessity. You're reading their nuances to the CPT codes. So when you say, hey, I can't bill that way, here's why, as opposed to like, hey, this just sounds shady. You then at least are coming with like, hey, this is why I'm concerned. I want to make informed decisions. Here's where my information's coming from. Can we talk about this? Because to Steve's point, I don't expect anyone to just like march into their VP of operations and be like, hey, this looks like bullshit as a brand new hire. But like it is your life, especially if you're in a licensure state, and there's more and more of them now. If you're in a licensure state, that is going to come back on you, not your company. I sit on our committee. We report to our state licensing board. We can't do anything to the agency other than like make a suggestion that the AG like go and investigate them. We can't do anything to your business owner. But if you're the licensee and you do things that are not ethical and not in compliance, then we do have to come and adjudicate that. And I don't want anyone, I don't want to come see any BCBA come there for a complaint because they were just underinformed or misinformed. Sorry, Kyle, no, that's over my minute.
It's okay. Steve went way over too.
Okay. But the pebble throwers. So I wrote that newsletter. So I wrote a newsletter on LinkedIn. I try to get it done once a week. Sometimes I am not as organized as I'd like to be, but I originally started a school group, Quality Initiatives and ABA. It's a free group for folks who were just kind of feeling stuck in our field to say, I want to do better. Like, I don't think anyone else wants to do better. It must just be me. I created that community so that folks would have a place to say, wait, there are folks who are just like me, and they may not be at my agency. They may not be in my hometown. They may not even be in my state. But there are folks who do genuinely want to help the field get better. And so we talked about it in that group. It was actually Mark Milady who said, I feel better about being chucking some pebbles in the Grand Canyon because that's what it feels like. But then I look to my left and I see someone else throwing a pebble, and then I see you to my right and you're throwing a pebble, and maybe we can push some boulders in there too. It feels more feasible when you are not the only one trying to do that. So if anything, if you are stuck, we just actually had a war game yesterday, and we were talking about this very issue where there's a brand new certificate holder and said, "Hey, my company wants me to bill like this, and I don't think that's right. What should I do about it?" And we worked through it in a war game. We are a safe space for folks who want to come and get support, especially if they don't have mentors in their agencies who have been around for more than a minute. We are happy to help support that. And it's free because we don't want money to be a barrier to mentorship and resources. So it's a free community to come to and rant.
I'll say that's probably a much better approach than my approach of just kicking in the VP's door on day one. And that's probably why I can never work for somebody else. So
I would.
But I will say there's way more jobs than there are BCBAs. So I do want to remind BCBAs that they're in a bit of a driver's seat right now. They need you more than you need them to some extent, especially if you're a brand new BCBA. You're not holding one of the senior, level positions, which can be harder to come from. But if you're a brand new BCBA holding a caseload, they need you.
like we deal with working with community mental health agencies and doing consulting for severe behavior. Had a head of one of the larger counties in Michigan talking to me the other day, they said they needed us to advise when to use physical management for someone who is dangerous. And I said, well, if you want my advice, it's never. You know what I mean? You're now bypassing my behavior plan to keep someone safe. And so that may be necessary, but that's not, as a behavior analyst, for me to say when that's necessary. I need you to say, no, this is the point right now that someone's life is in danger. Otherwise, use what's in my plan because it's going to be more effective. And I'll teach you how to try to use those techniques to, not reinforce them. But it would be unethical for me to tell you to stop what you're doing and grab this person, put them in a holder, or do something along those lines, especially because I'm not an expert in those techniques. I've not been trained on them. And they wanted us to name which technique to use when. And their response was like, wow, I never heard that ethics piece. We have all kinds of BCBAs putting these in plans all over the place, and no one's ever brought that up before. I'm like, well, no one on my team is going to be doing that because that is outside our scope of competency. And so again, just you have this funding source, these individuals of power that they're not even aware of what the ethics code says or what we should and shouldn't be doing. But unless you are an expert in safety care or one of those, types of trainings, I don't think any of us should be suggesting how they should be used whatsoever outside of, hey, try to, not deliver a lot of attention while you're doing a 2-person assist if you have to do so to keep them safe.
Yeah. Same with medications. We've had that too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They want us to list the PRNs, and we're like, how about you just don't get people high for assaulting people and instead use the behavior plan? But I guess that's outside my realm, so.
I digress.
One last thought, Kyle,
Yeah,
for
go ahead.
this question before you move on.
Go
You
for
can
it.
get a new job. You can't get a new license.
Yes,
Kristen
appreciate
has
it.
these little truth bombs. These little clippable truth bombs she keeps dropping on us.
That's what I'm here for. That's why Steve and Taylor called me.
Yeah, and then I'm here talking about pirates. So that's how we fall into this.
Hey, you put it all together. It's a perfect balance. Steve, I'll start with you on this one. Are organizations relying too heavily on graduate programs to produce these ready-made, quote unquote, BCBAs with such high demands for our services? Are they prioritizing our availability over competence?
Yeah, I am probably not, at least it's for the BCBAs coming through some of these programs. They may not agree with me, or the people who are hiring them may not agree with me. But to me, I think that education should be all about the science of human behavior and learning that science. And then your practicum site can teach you some of those skills to actually do some workplace things. Your supervisor for your hours can help you navigate some of these issues that may come up and provide some of that guidance. But the actual program itself, to me, should be about having that underlying knowledge. Because like I said, I can teach someone to do what I do. I don't have the time to go back and give them a behavior analytic foundation. And I think there's a lot more to it that we'll go into probably after this, but I don't think ready-made should be what we expect from someone coming out of a program, especially when I've had someone come through a program who could work in an autism center day one, but they couldn't give me a technical definition of reinforcement. They just said, "Oh, it's something
Mm,
people like." And I'm like,
yeah.
"Now we have a problem."
Kristen, go ahead.
So even the best programs, like I think even if you went to, I mean, I think that we're a little biased, three of us, that Western is a great program. But even coming out of a great program and great supervision, I still think that folks need oversight when they first graduate. I equivalent our certificate to a driver's license. So like parallel parking is not for you. Like driving at night shouldn't be with like multiple friends in the back seat. Like stay on surface roads like during normal hours, and like maybe also have a grown up with you if you're driving on like traffic in Phoenix with like 7 lanes in either direction the first time you go. Because yes, you can get from here to the grocery store, but like maybe you're not ready for everything. So I there's no shame to that. And I think that's like the problem. Like I don't know, guys, like thinking back when I was a BAT student, like we had second years that we could ask questions. Like Nick Weatherly was a doc student at the time. Like we go ask him, or we could ask any of our professors if we had questions. And like that was just how it was framed. Like you're dumb and don't know stuff. Go ask smarter, better people. Oh, yep. Okay, good. So we did that. Like that shouldn't stop just because you passed your exam. Like the day before you're certified to the day after, like that piece of paper didn't somehow just magically be like, oh, but no, you were 100% ready to be independent clinicians with no oversight ever, and no one ever maybe collectively working with you ever again.
Yeah, Taylor, go for it.
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of like on a downer for other organizations today, but I think the second half of your question where it said with high demand for services, are organizations forced to prioritize availability over competence? I'm going to say from my experiences, that is an overwhelming yes. That I think like, and even like Kristen said, like where BCBAs are in the driver's seat, it is because I think organizations are looking to fill spots and fill those revenue streams, whether for positive or negative purposes. I think the overwhelming majority of organizations that maybe aren't the mom and pop types that are run by BCBAs that were created by a parent of a kid with autism. It is a business venture, and just like my organization is a business venture, and I do need to make a profit to be able to pay my own bills and my salary. I think once we get too far away from that, it does end up being just we're filling seats and we're submitting the reports and we're making sure our revenue numbers are in the black. And as long as that's happening, it's not as important to at least the organization to ensure that we have competence and good clinical outcomes. And then I have follow-up when we have time, but I'm over my minute.
Yeah, no, you're good. Is maybe a better question is are organizations indifferent to availability versus competence? Is that a better way?
I would
I
say
think, I think as you almost have to wear two hats as a BCBA who's running or owning a business, because you have to be able to look at it from that business perspective, but you also have to look at it behavior analytically. And if you're only looking at as a CEO or CFO, then you're not even, it's a warm body. It's doing what I can bill for, and that's it. But now we look at what's going on in the field, and the lack of systems that we set up, which is shocking because as behavior analysts, that's what we do, is set up systems and a way to actually plan and design before we jumped into this thing like head first. We could have made it so these things were in place and this hadn't happened. And now we're kind of coming up to this issue where now they're trying to cut hours, cut funding, all these things because we haven't met our promises. And that's because we didn't do the planning and the studies and get the data ahead of time. We just kind of said, hey, this is what will work for us, and like ran with it.
I think part of the issue is too that business owners who are not BCBAs do not understand that those 4 letters after your name are not equivalent to another person with those same 4 letters. It is not like other industries. Like my husband's an engineer, right? And so like his program, like when they graduate and their internships, like it is very structured so that if like him and 2 other guys all have the same resume, like they could all do each other's job, right? Because they just had such similar training and coursework and things like that, that they can basically, swap in, swap out and do very well with that. our system is not the same. So I've talked to business owners when I said, well, who's overseeing all the clinical decision making with these random remote BCBAs that you've hired now in 5 different states, and you have no clinic director. They're all just doing whatever. And he told me, well, they all have master's degrees. I'm like, neat. That means absolutely zero amount to me in terms of what their level of competency is to be able to go and do any of this work independently. So I think there is a huge misconception that because someone has a certification that they can go do all roles and do them very well. Nope.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Taylor, go ahead.
I was going to say my kind of wrap up to all this to hopefully maybe tie all these questions together. And I think maybe even reference one of the other podcasts we had done is I think there's already some really good resources in our field to kind of link all of these questions together. One of my favorite being Brianne Hartley's apprentice model. That's something that we follow at our organization, but it allows kind of like what Kristen was saying with like that new BCBA who's just getting their driver's license to be able to have all of these different experiences, to have that level and degree of mentorship, and to ensure that all of these other kind of components of all the questions throughout today's podcast get addressed, get skills built up to at least some degree of competency before they're either released into our own organization or out into the field. And I think that kind of takes up a lot of maybe some of these issues that we're running into. Now, is it maybe all of them? No. And I know we've got one maybe more follow-up wrap-up, but I think that's my overall wrap-up is I think if we can follow the type of model that allows for structured mentorship, structured experience, structured supervision, after you're done with that, that's where we can go. So again, I referenced Brianne Hartley's apprentice model. It's good stuff. I think it's in behavior analysis and practice.
Cool. Yeah, I'll include that in the show notes this time around too. Kristen, go ahead.
Yeah, to your point, Taylor, I'm familiar with her model too. I read her article and everything. But I think there needs to be ownership on both the BCBA and candidates to say, like, we're gonna do all of this together. And if at 2,000 hours, I don't think you're ready, I'm also not going to sign your paperwork. And we need a candidate to be like, cool, I understand that this sucks a little bit, but you're not signing it because you actually want me to be successful, not because you're a dickhead. And so I'm not leaving and going to another agency. I had someone come into our clinic back when I was in a clinic. We had, great program, free mentorship, free supervision. She was at the time, I think 400 hours away from having enough. And so great, cool. We can certainly get you organized, and started going through some areas of oh, what do you mean you've gotten training in this area? It's very apparent that she was not ready and was not going to be ready. I very clearly told her, hey, I will get you ready. I am committed. We will get you organized and ready to be a badass BCBA, but you're not going to get there in 400 hours. And she left and she went somewhere else and got her 400 hours signed, and maybe sat for the exam. I don't know. I didn't follow up, but I think there needs to be ownership from the candidates too, that it is not just a race to the finish line. It is a journey to competency.
Yeah, I can echo those sentiments as well, because I do that with my supervisees, and I have had more than one leave because of that, because of holding that expectation, because of holding that standard. In the midst of employee, so I'm the employer, right? Like Kristen, just like you're saying, we have free mentorship, free supervision hours, all that. I've had more than one leave when it was, hey, come on, let's get going. Nope, I can go somewhere else. It's just going to sign my paperwork.
Yeah.
Even on top of that same person I talked about that had their master's was almost done, had a ton of their hours done before they came in, couldn't give me the definition, and we're going through, and I'm noticing everything surface level. That's what made me even say, okay, let's stop and let's do this. And so I reached out to the what is the ethics hotline?
Bailey hotline.
John Bailey's. And I'm like, well, here's the situation. Am I even allowed to withhold my signature? Because no one ever went over that in our training. You know what I mean? Yeah. And they're like, not only can you, but you are a gatekeeper. So don't be letting people into this field who are not. And I think because some of the, I don't want to isolate programs, but some of the programs seem to be just putting out this ability to pass those tests and then teach you to pass the exam. And it's even watered down our exam, so it's not even true competency tests, but it's, can you figure out how to answer these strangely weirded questions the right way, instead of, can you show that you know the science of behavior analysis?
Gotcha. Let's move on to our last one. Kristen, I know you got a hard stop here, so are you good for this one more?
I told them I would be 5 minutes late to my next call.
Perfect. Okay. Awesome. Wait, who's first this time? I did Steve first last time. So Kristen, you're up first this time. Cool. Okay. Hey, last question. How can we use the science of behavior analysis to help not only build the repertoires that balance, clinical expertise, but also payer and system constraints, things like insurance requirements, Medicaid rules, things like that?
So I think Steve mentioned earlier, like not to have like CPT code training and things like that as part of the supervision experience because it does vary from state to state. And I agree with that partially. I do think there are definitely nuances, and it's very different if you're billing commercial versus Medicaid and things like that. Different states allow for tiered billing system and those kind of things. But Taylor mentioned the idea of medical necessity, and I do think that piece needs to be ingrained in our supervision practices, including the planning for transition and discharge. This is where funders get really mad at us, and they should be. When you have a kid who's in comprehensive services since age 2 and now they're 12 and they're like, 40 more hours, please. Like there's a reason. So I do think there's pieces of that. It should be part of our supervision before we go and take and sit for our exam. Not sure I answered your question, Kyle, but that's what I have for you.
Hey, that's what the talk after the minutes are up. So we'll go back to it. So yeah, but Taylor, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I already know Steve's going to talk about OBM and system stuff, so I can skip that. And I think it really it boils down to, and he's going to talk about reinforcement contingencies. But I think it's going to be really trying to balance. And I don't know how to do it though, because I don't want a government, I don't want a credentialing board or credentialing body to just come up with quality standards. I don't want a quality standard metric, but I think there has to be some degree of analysis or assessment of organizations in some way or in some degree, or maybe at least training on the front end to allow behavior analysts to identify, hey, maybe this organization doesn't have what it needs to be a good organization, or good, or an organization that puts the clinical outcomes where they need to be, right? We could maybe mirror hospitals in that regard, where the nurses, the doctors, they all know, hey, I'm not going to go work for blank that's been on strike for 6 months because they're overstaffing their nurses. So I think those are those situations where I think if maybe we can build some more of that on the front end in our graduate programs, in our supervision requirements, maybe even to say, like, here are those metrics, right? Like, I think, years and years and years ago, right, we identified you need that 8-hour supervisor training to be a supervisor. Did that really make the impact that we had identified and wanted it to make? So I'm not a huge fan of those types of things. I realize I'm over my time, but I think we have to create some sort of metric or basis for identifying when all of those things are where they need to be to promote good clinical outcomes.
Steve, without OBM or reinforcement contingencies, you got.
I wasn't going to say you missed your chance to jump in there before me. I'm going to talk more globally. I think we need to go back to the drawing board and do a mass analysis here. There are some studies that are looking into how many hours are necessary, but it's not global. We went into this whole thing, we had advocates, people wanted help. We went in there like, hey, Lovaas told us 40 hours, so that's what we want, 40 hours. And then we kind of like, hey, we're getting paid pretty well for this. We're just going to keep trying to milk this 40 hours, even if we're doing well, because that's what we've always been told to do. And so we need to get in there, mathematicians on our side, to figure out what the bell curve is. You know what I mean? Where is the maximization? Where are the outliers? Program in for those outliers so they're not left in the wind as well. But we need to be able to come back to the table and say, all right, we screwed up. Let's look at the math. This is what's saying. This is where we're going to optimize. This would be even better. This is how much supervision is necessary. Not like, I need 25 hours of billable hours from the supervisor, but here's what the data actually show it should be. So we're willing to cut that down and not, keep taking all the money we can, but instead say, you pay us a little bit better, and then this is where our break-even point is, and this is how it will work for us to be sustainable as a company and as a field, not waste anybody's time or money, and be able to just show that this is what the math says. We're not even trying to just, make money here. I think that's really what it's going to take to redesign this system and to do that.
I will reference David Cox and his colleagues are doing really cool stuff on that front using big data and clinical outcomes versus hours. Kristen, go ahead. You got your hand up.
Yeah, I think part of that needs to be there needs to be some onus on like these massive organizations that are just sitting on piles and piles of data, right?
Mhm.
That they keep under lock and key. Like there's so much data that we could be, to Steve's point, looking at and running analytics on, but if we can't access it, then we can't do that. So I wish there would be some more mandates on transparency of outcomes, not just like what little tagline I put on their website of like, we graduate learners, bullshit like that. But like actual true numbers of like the length of time that kids are in service, from the latency from like when they were diagnosed to start, like all of those pieces. I wish there was more transparency publicly available for not just the big organizations. I'm not just picking on them. They just have a lot of data. So obviously it'd be nice to get it. But I think all organizations should have some more publicly facing data.
Yeah, I'll say I know Dave does great work, and I mean, his analysis mathematically are great, but it is that lack of like, how much data and what data he should have access to is what I'm getting at. We need
Yeah.
a global perspective for him to do those analyses well.
I don't know if we have time for my follow-up, but I think, Steve, I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to agree with you wholeheartedly, because I think when you start to create and publish information like that, it gets used in ways against us in the form of funders establishing policy and procedure that fits the center of that bell curve. And I have in my organization, I do have a 13-year-old who's getting 40 hours a week. Me and his BCBA, we just had a meeting last week to say it's about time to start cutting this. But if we have something that says 98% of 13-year-olds don't need 40 hours per week, the funders are going to unanimously say, you don't get it. And that's my worry. That's my worry. So I get your intention.
I think they're already saying it, though, right? I feel like they're already making blanket statements.
They're already referencing. I think right now what's happening, though, in our field is they're referencing more and more obscure publications. Whereas if we aggregate these data as behavior analysts, publish in behavior analytic journals, they're going to go, y'all are the ones telling us this. We didn't get this from some obscure database that's got, we're having to calculate p-values of 0.01 to determine this. It's like, no, you all said 98% of kids don't need 40 hours a week.
Right. And so I think before you go to the table, you need a contingency plan for those people who are going to fall through the cracks if they don't get it before you come to it, and have that plan, because again, at this point, I think they're going to come up with their own data and say it's not necessary, and they're going to cut us out of the whole conversation if we don't come up with this data and say, most of the time it's going to be good enough. Here are these outliers, and we're going to need a plan for them too, rather than just saying, hey, it's worked up to this point. We got to just hope that it keeps working until they get sick of us, sort of thing.
Yeah. No, I'm not disagreeing with your intentions on that, though, Steve.
Everyone gets devil horns. That's what I've seen here.
All right.
Hey, we are out of time. This has been a really, really great conversation. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for listening. If you listened through this far, let us know what you think of these topics and more down in the comments. I've been told to reference people need to subscribe and like and those things too. So I feel funny doing that, but do those things because those help us. And thank you all for joining us. I appreciate it. This has been.
I'm going to add in, if you're going to ABAI, San Francisco, Kyle made me pack up almost 500 pounds of swag for Cooperant Learning. So come get some free stuff and meet us there and hang out. So
this has been, this is Steve's doing, and I'm going to end on that note. So, all right.